Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to stick to Sweden and we're going to head up towards Gothenburg once again. Göteborg, as you would say in Swedish, the Swedish craft beer capital up there on the west coast. There's your Gothenburg catchphrase, because as we always say, it's a bit of a channel tradition these days. But for this review we're going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel a good couple of times before, and we've had some really good beers from them in the past. So I'm quite curious to see how this one turns out, because this is a style that I've not had from them before. So for this one then, we are going to visit one of Gothenburg's many gypsy breweries, and this time we're having another beer from Electric Nurse. So this particular beer is called the Dragonfly. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is a barley wine. So yeah, really curious to see how this beer turns out. The last one that I had from Electric Nurse was simply called Imperial Stout, and I think that one was actually brewed with one of the breweries up in Uppsala for some reason. I'm not sure exactly why that was, but most of their beers are produced in the Gothenburg area. But yeah, this is the very first time I'm having a barley wine from these guys. If memory serves me correctly, this beer was released as part of the Lokal Småskalig assortment for December of 2020. I think this one might have been a December release, but as I say, I've got a mix of beers from December 2020 and January 2021. It could well have been a January 2021 release. I honestly can't remember at this point actually, but I've had some very good beers from Electric Nurse over the years, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this one turns out. So 10% barley wine, this one. I've heard that this is an English style barley wine, but we'll talk a little bit about that later on in the video. So yeah, curious to see how it turns out, and let's crack on then. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Electric Nurse before, and you will no doubt see more added to that list at some point in the fairly near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you. That's being added to quite often at the moment, because I'm just working my way through a stockpile of Swedish beer that I have. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Electric Nurse then, on to my brewery notes. So as I've mentioned to you already, Electric Nurse are a gypsy brewery, phantom brewery, cuckoo brewery, whatever you actually want to call them. They don't have their own premises. They kind of brew at a variety of different host breweries, if you like. But the company was founded back in 2012 by Peter Robertson and Ida Engström. So Peter is an electrical engineer, while Ida is a nurse, hence the name Electric Nurse. But Ida is also the daughter of Mikael Engström Dugge, who is the man behind the famous Dugges Brewery. But both of these guys love the American hoppy style beers, because you know they love the big kind of fruity flavours and stuff like this. And they got together, started brewing their beers, and then they released the first ones back in 2013. But more recently they've expanded their range to introduce a few different styles, and they now have a third member of their team, which is Jesper. And so Peter and Ida are now working full-time at the brewery as well. So they've kind of gone away from being an electrician, an electrical engineer and a nurse to actually investing their time fully in the brewery, which is quite cool. And most of their beers are produced at Dugges Brewery, as I mentioned to you, but there are other ones produced in various different breweries around Gothenburg. I think when this is a 330 can, I would wonder if this one has been produced at Spike Brewery perhaps, or maybe Bibliotek. It might have been produced at one of these places. But like I say, one of the recent beers I had was brewed at, I want to say, Slottskällens Brewery in Uppsala, which is over the other side of the country actually. So yeah, they do brew their beers in a variety of different places. They are still a gypsy brewery, and I'm guessing that when Ida is so close, is so closely related to Mikael Dugge, I think that probably it's unlikely that these guys will change from being a gypsy brewery, if you like. But who knows? Maybe that will come. But at the moment they're producing around 250,000 litres of beer per year. They've got various releases coming out at different points in the year through Systembolaget, and as of January 2021, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 155 different kinds of beer. But yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Electric Nurse for the moment. Quite a nice little brewery actually, and I've had some great beers from them over the years. I had a really nice orange, was it a marmalade IPA? The first beer that I tried from these guys is one that that will always stick in my mind because it was a big sort of marmalade IPA. But like I say, I've had a good number of beers from these guys over the years. This must be review number like 8 or 9 or something that I've done from Electric Nurse, and I always keep an eye out for what these guys are releasing because they do quality beers, as I've said. But yeah, check out the brewery website in the description below. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can of course check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all those different beers that they've done. But yeah, let's crack on then and have a look at this beer and see how it goes. So like I said to you earlier, this one is a 10% barley wine. I've heard that it's an English barley wine actually, but the artwork on this one, as you can see, is, you know, fairly plain actually compared to some of the other Electric Nurse ones that we had. It's a bit strange to call it a Dragonfly, but it doesn't have a dragonfly on the cover, so I'm not sure about that, to be honest with you. I'm not sure why they've said that with this one, but it says Her har ni barleywine med rejäla givor med humle för smak, beska uppbackad and crafted malt base. So yeah, basically here you have a barley wine with I'm not sure exactly what that is, but yeah, with hops for taste, for a bitter taste, which is backed up by a crafty malt base for body and sweetness. There's an addition of orange skin on this one, and the barley wine, it says the barley wine is a type of beer that works well with a cheese table. Yeah, a cheese platter, I guess we could say. So yeah, this one I think should be quite nice. As I say, 10% English style barley wine. This one, from what I've heard, it might well be more American, but 330ml can, and I think I must have paid about 40 or 45 Swedish kroners for this because it is higher in alcohol. So yeah, probably about 45 Swedish kroners, which translates to very slightly over £4 sterling, about €4.50, and then maybe about $5.25 American for those of you watching in different parts of the world. But yeah, 10% barley wine, this one, with apple. I always mix that up when I switch between English and Swedish. Appelsin skål. So this one's basically got orange peel in it. So I think it should be quite nice actually. So let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. Then it's been a wee while since I drank a barley wine, come to think of it. So this one is a nice little bit of a change of pace from the Imperial Stouts and the IPAs that I've been drinking a lot of recently. So yeah, it should be pretty cool. But remember, the barley wine is... Oh, that was a strange bubble. But yeah, the barley wine is an English style of beer. Basically, it's the big brother of the double IPA. And the paleos, the IPAs, the double IPAs and the barley wines are all related to each other through their malt to hop ratios. So yeah, basically this is the big brother, if you like, of a double IPA. But yeah, the main difference for me between the English ones and the American ones, I would say that the English ones are a bit more bready, sometimes a bit more kind of toasty in a sense as well, and the fruits come across as a little bit more sort of, you know, phenolic almost a little bit. They've got a little bit more of a kind of roasty, toasty, kind of dried fruity character to them, whereas the American ones are really oily and caramelly, and then they've got a lot of kind of big juicy oily fruits in them as well. So there is a fair little bit of difference in the flavour profile between an American and an English IPA. The American ones also tend to be stronger, but you know, that's when the Americans get a hold of like an old world beer style and take it over there, you know, they are going to do that sort of thing. The Americans are going to sweeten it up and put a whole host of other things in it. And not that there's anything wrong with that. I do love a good American barley wine, but that tends to be the trend of what they do. But yeah, as you can see with this beer, this is poured. It's actually a very, very dark amber colour. I'm not sure how well that's going to show up on the camera, to be honest with you, but if we put the light through this beer, it's a very, very rich, very, very dark amber colour. When you saw that when we poured this one, it had a very thin, kind of maybe about a quarter finger if you were lucky, frothy, kind of fawny coloured head. There's a very kind of there's a very sort of how would you say it? There is a very kind of thin, kind of foamy layer just sitting on the top there, but there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of the head there, but I mean overall it looks pretty nice. You will find barley wines that are darker than this, you will find ones that are maybe a bit brighter than this, it just depends. So the colour of your beer is dependent on two things: one, the type of malts that you use; two, the length of boil that you put in the wort. Barley wines can vary quite a lot actually, but you know, the longer that you boil the wort for these beers, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you'll get a darker colour out of it. But going by the colour of this one, I don't think this has too long a boil. I would guess maybe, you know, 90 minutes to 2 hours. I wouldn't think this one would have too long a boil, but you know, it wouldn't be incomprehensible or inconceivable that it was a little bit more than that. But yeah, very, very rich, dark amber colour this one. It certainly looks the part of a barley wine, and it looks quite old school in that sense. It's the American ones that tend to be a little bit more kind of dark than this, to be honest with you, a little bit darker than this. But yeah, looks lovely this one, so let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on. I'm very, very curious to see what this beer has in store for us. Yeah, yeah, where to start with this one? I mean, it does smell distinctly more English, to be honest with you, and that would make sense because, you know, Peter at the brewery is English. So he's, you know, he has, I think this is one of the reasons why they brew a lot of these kind of more traditional English style beers is because of that. But this one does come across quite nicely. It is actually a little bit spicy, to be honest with you. I think, I've got a feeling this was a December release, and it would make sense because it does come across as a little spicy. It's probably intended as a winter warmer. But yeah, it actually, in a lot of ways, the aroma of this one surprises me just because it has a little bit of that spicy character. So yeah, let's try and have a look at that one then. So a nice kind of brown bready character, I would say, kind of forms the backbone of this one. There's a lot of kind of brown sugar in there. It's not too sweet, it's not too kind of toasty or anything like that. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. So that's definitely an interesting point to take away about this beer. It's somewhere in the middle of all of these. Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle of all of this kind of all of this kind of sweetness on the barley wine scale, if you like. So yeah, definitely a brown bready base. It's got a little bit of that kind of wholemeal character to it. Some very nice sort of how would you say? Some very nice kind of just bread crusty notes to this beer actually. But on top of that, you get a nice kind of oily caramel out of it. It does have a wee bit of a kind of caramelised vibe to it. It's not as strong as like tree colour molasses or anything like that, but it does have, you know, like a very thick, you know, kind of just big oily caramel quality to it. Little touch of toastiness to it, but not overly much. And then you can smell the orange kind of peel just mixed into all of that. It's quite an interesting malt base you've got. There's one or two little woody elements in there as well. But like I say, you've got a little bit of a kind of almost spicy sort of thing. I hesitate to say cinnamon, but it's almost like a really woody, it's almost like a really kind of spicy, like cherry wood or something like that. So that's interesting. I'm curious to see how that turns out in the aroma, come to think of it. Yeah, I'm really not sure what to make about that. When you do get a little bit of that kind of butter candy, or there's original note out of it as well, which is interesting, and we'll see how that translates into the flavour. But on the hoppy side of things, it doesn't strike me as being the most hoppy of barley wines. And I do wonder if there is English hops in this, you know, like Kent Goldings or something like that. So you get a little bit of earthiness out of the beer. There's a bit of a herbal quality there as well, and there is a wee touch of floral aromaticity. But the thing that I think, you know, it's the herbalness and the herbal quality and the sort of floral notes, I think, that give it away as being English hops, because the English hops, the green component for me always comes across as quite well blended, whereas, you know, the German ones are quite smooth in a way, the Czech hops are quite spicy and bright, and the American ones have that big, you know, just pungency to them. English hops are a little bit more kind of reserved in a lot of ways for me. But you do get a wee bit of a grassy component to this beer, and there's a nice kind of, there is a nice little bit of a kind of, there's a mix of interesting fruits in this. You've got a little bit of a kind of sultana quality, there's a little bit of a peary note to it, and you've got a bit of oily orange as well. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, I think, is quite interesting. So yeah, the fruity side of this beer, I think, is really interesting. A lot of dried fruits, almost, I hesitate to say marmalade because it's not quite sweet enough to be marmalade, to be honest with you. It's got a, you know, there's sultanas in there, there's pears, there's like a sort of dried, almost apricot-y type note to it as well. Then it's got that kind of orange, peely, spicy kind of thing in there. But the woodiness really comes out of this beer the further that you go into it, I would say. But yeah, I really like how this beer goes together. The aroma of this one, it does make me very, very curious, so I think it's about time to have a taste of this beer then. So as I always say, ponder over the aroma a little bit before you get stuck in, but let's do this one now. So this one is the Dragonfly, 10% barley wine with a little bit of orange peel added into it from Electric Nurse, one of the various gypsy breweries operating in the Gothenburg area on the west coast of Sweden. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål, cheers. yeah, that's a pretty nice beer, I have to say. I like how this one goes about its business, definitely. I think I've maybe got this one just a touch cold, to be honest with you, because with a barley wine, I think I've got this one maybe around 8 or so degrees, and probably, to be honest, it should be about 10. It probably should be about, 10, maybe 12. So I am drinking this one a little bit too cold, I would say, but the flavours are still coming out quite nicely. Of course, as the beer warms up, it's going to just kind of thicken out a wee bit and give you some more, and just give you a little bit more sort of, just give you a little bit more kind of thickness in the mouthfeel, actually. So that's the main thing it'll affect. But yeah, I do like how that goes together for me, to be honest. It's interesting for sure. So, where to start with this one then? It's got, it has a nice, it has the base of this beer, if you go into the middle third of your palate, you've got a nice kind of, how do you say, a sort of wholemeal, brown bready sort of thing. That's the backbone of this beer. But then on top of that, the bready notes are almost kind of quite thin, if that makes sense. And then on top of that, you've got a kind of, again, it's quite a slick sort of brown sugary layer, and it's very straight up in that sense. So yeah, baseline of the beer is a sort of wholemealy bread. If you go further back to that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, there's a more sort of toasty, grainy, bread crusty type quality there. It feels a little bit more bread crusty in that sense. And then at the back third of your palate, then you get a bit more of a kind of fluffy, bready character to it, if you like. The sort of more oily, brown, sugary notes are sitting there in the middle of the palate. So yeah, back third of your tongue, you can feel that the the bready notes just kind of thickening up a little bit. But as you move into the that middle third of your palate, you've got a nice kind of the brown sugars are a bit difficult to describe, because what you're going to notice with this beer in the middle of your palate is there's a bit of woodiness. This beer really does have a kind of woody flavour to it, and it's a slightly spicy wood, particularly on the front half of that middle third of your palate. It does dry out a little bit and it becomes a wee bit more spicy. Like I say, this is like a sort of winter warmer beer in a lot of ways. I was thinking that's what it would be in the aroma, and that does translate into the flavour. But yeah, in the very centre of your palate, there's a good bit of brown sugar there, and it's a mix of the malts and the alcohol, obviously. But yeah, in that middle third of your palate, as you come forward from the back, you can feel there is a bit of thickness there. Then as you reach that border region with the more bread crusty notes, the thickness drops away. Then sitting on top of the bread, you've got more of a how would you say, you do have a little bit more of a kind of just brown sugary element to it. But I really like how this beer goes together. I like how it goes about its business. So yeah, in that sense, there's in the middle of your palate, you can feel there is a bit of a sweeter caramel element there, and you will get one or two little Werther's Original type notes out of it. But as you move kind of further out from that, it has a little bit more of a kind of darker caramelly note. Like I say, I'd be curious to know what the boil length in this was, because it's got a nice, very, very thick caramel note to it, but it's not quite almost strong enough, if you like, to be, or not dark enough to be treacle or molasses. And yeah, this is one of the other characteristics that I would say makes it an English barley wine, is that the sugars aren't overly sweet. It does have a little bit of a toasty element to it as well, so it's a thick but still quite toasted and almost slightly dry kind of brown sugary note that you're getting out of this one. But yeah, I certainly like this beer. It is definitely an English barley wine, there's no doubt in my mind about that whatsoever. Absolutely an English barley wine, this one, just because of that toasty dryness of the brown sugars. But yeah, it's another very nicely executed beer, and that's kind of what we've come to expect of Electric Nurse. And yeah, it seems to be just recently the two beers that I've had from these guys most recently have been traditional English type beers, and they've worked out really nicely. I'd love to see them have a go at a Scotch ale. I'd be curious for them to have a go at a Scotch ale. Because I think they could do, if they're doing a barley wine like this, I think they could pull off a Scotch ale quite nicely. But yeah, the thing you're going to notice in the malt base with this beer is it gets a little bit more bready and just a little touch kind of drier the further you go into the aftertaste. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate you've got a nice little touch of earthiness there, and as you move further forward it definitely gets a little bit more kind of herbal. I do think there's a bit of, you know, Kent Goldings or Bramling's Cross or something like that in here. There's a few other hops it could be, you know, Challenger or whatever, but I'm pretty sure it's English hops that are in this because of that kind of herbal component that they have. But yeah, as you reach the kind of front corners of the palate, you've got a nice kind of floral, you do have a nice little bit of floral aromatic quality coming out of the beer. Then round the front curve of the tongue you've got a nice kind of lighter grassy element to it as well. So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the grassy side of this beer has a little bit of brightness to it as well, but the fruity notes in this, this is one of these beers where it really just tastes like you would expect from the aroma. It's one of these beers that just translates almost exactly as you would expect from the aroma into the flavour. So yeah, on that front part of your palate, you've got a really nice, I would say, like, it's a very dried fruit quality you get with this one. As I always say, on that front third of your palate you've got that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. If you go to that border region between front third and middle third of your palate, it's got there is a bit more of that kind of bread crusty sort of thing. There's a bit of a wholemeal kind of bready there. Then in front of that you've got a nice, I would say, you've got a little bit of a say, how would I describe that? It has that sort of, just, you get the orange peel in there, like it's not quite marmalade, it's like a very dry marmalade almost, so you can feel the orange peel kind of sitting there. The orange peel I think sits at the back of that front third of your tongue and then just gives the beer a bit of zestiness, but as you move further forward you'll get like sultana type flavours, you'll get kind of peary sort of things as well, a little bit of apricot. Then on the front kind of edge of the tongue the beer just has a wee bit of a kind of zesty quality to it. It is a little bit orangey, but yeah, it's mainly a kind of oily sort of fruity character that comes out of this one for sure. So I'm really curious about how that goes together. So yeah, it's this one. I like the dry. The more that you drink of this beer, the more it comes across like a sort of dried fruity thing. As I say, the pears, the bit of apricot, sultana kind of note out of this. That's what really lingers in this beer with me. There's, you know, it's just very nicely executed. I think that it has that wee bit, that woody spice comes out. You get a bit of the kind of orangey peel sort of thing in there as well, and it really develops a bit of a dry aftertaste, but not, you know, madly dry. Just nice, you know, just a nice kind of complementary dryness. Actually, I think that's a good way to describe this one. But 100% English barley wine. 100% English barley wine, this beer. So yeah, I really like how that goes together for sure. So big thumbs up to Electric Nurse for this one. A very nice traditional barley wine, this. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I would say that it's kind of bottom end to full bodied. I would say about that, yeah, bottom end to full bodied. The carbonation is very smooth. The mouthfeel comes across as quite clean. I mean, a lot of Nordic beers do come across as quite clean in a sense, and this beer is no exception to that rule. But yeah, the overall with this beer, it's the malty side of it has a really nice kind of, it's got a little touch of graininess to it, which you expect. There's a good little bit of an oily kind of brown sugary sweetness to it, and you've also got some, you know, you've just got a lovely kind of oily fruity character in there as well. The bitterness in this beer is not too high, maybe about, I think I would want to say about 40 IBUs at the absolute most out of this one. But yeah, it's just very nicely executed. So again, a thumbs up to Electric Nurse for this. Another solid kind of English traditional beer from these guys, if you like. So yeah, this one's been really nice to review, and I hope that you guys have enjoyed my take on this. So yeah, certainly look forward to seeing what else Electric Nurse are going to put out there over the next little while. But this is a very nice winter release, this one. I'm reviewing it for you at the end of February, so we are quite still firmly in winter, and it certainly suits the times quite well, I would say. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one then. This one was the Dragonfly, 10% barley wine, English barley wine all the way, from Electric Nurse, one of the numerous gypsy breweries operating in the Gothenburg area on the west coast of Sweden. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Electric Nurse. We will no doubt return to these guys at some point in the next couple of months, but this has been a good beer to review. I've enjoyed it, and I hope that you guys have as well. You know, catch you guys on the next video. I think this is a beer definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of your kind of traditional English barley wines. Thanks again for watching. Check out my social media, check out Electric Nurse Brewery, and I'll catch you guys later. Slàinte, skål, cheers, and see you in the next review.